Hi, my name is Jack Rockwood, and my pitch is for a game called Spaceship Slingshot. I was inspired to create this game by a game I played when I was a kid called Stack the States. It was a game that my mom found to help us learn all the states in the US. And we ended up playing it for years after we even needed to learn the information anymore. It was a really fun, like kinetic game about like stacking these states together by getting these questions right and trying to get them to stack as high as possible. The gameplay was so fun, and all the animations were so cute that we just competed at it for the longest time. And so I wanted to create a game that mixed that aspect of like addicting gameplay and that relational gameplay to other people with learning the way Stack the States did. And so I came up with this game. Players will maneuver around a 2D space using a spaceship, kind of similar to asteroids, and use the gravitational pull of planets to swing around and go into answer rings to answer questions about space and the universe. Here's kind of the basic idea that I've mapped out. Asteroid esque spaceship design. As you can kind of see here, the spaceship can utilize the gravitational pull of the planet to kind of like gain speed and swing them in different directions. I want it like kind of easy to learn, hard to master movement, so that players can try to get the fastest time and compete with their fellow classmates. Questions should be direct, straight to the point, and easy to read, so that the game can be fast and kind of reactive, and so that you're not kind of slowing down the gameplay to try to digest the questions. Um, and there'll be a scoring system, so players can kind of relate the score to their classmates and kind of compete for the highest. Here's kind of the flow chart here. There's going to be that optional tutorial. As this game is, the goal is to have this replayability. I wanted to kind of limit the downtime necessary for each playthrough. So, the first playthrough, there's an optional tutorial and getting familiar with the controls. But after that, if players want to go back and try to, speed their time up, they can skip through that. Uh, the story of the game is that they're a space cadet trying to earn a spot in the fleet, and so they must maneuver around this training area and answer questions about space in order to gain a spot in the fleet. That also compares to the rating system, the scoring system of the game. Will be ranked in terms of like a space kind of army kind of fleet of spaceships. So like pilot all the way up to like commander, stuff like that. The main gameplay, asteroid-esque space movement, as I said before. But the main gimmick really is that gravitational pull of the ships, giving kind of like a way for players to like learn systems and kind of master speed, while also kind of teaching those concepts of like how gravity works in a vacuum, and how objects are attracted to each other. We'll get into this later, but it's a core part of high school curriculum in Michigan. And then players will have to fly through rings to answer questions. So that's kind of a more concrete, direct teaching approach that this game has. I want to have a public leaderboard, and I decided on initials for that, just to kind of limit what high schoolers could do with a text box that would be made public. And then we can also kind of control uh, what inputs are allowed there through sensors and stuff. But the idea behind a leaderboard is that it will kind of it brings players back to the game and reinforces those learning concepts, as it's like, well, John got a higher score than me, and I can't, I can't have him beating me, and so it'll have players coming back to it just for that competition purpose. But I also want a really satisfying gameplay loop. So even without the idea of competition, players are just having a fun time navigating the space while learning these concepts. The story arc is pretty simple. The gameplay is not based around the story, but it's very simple, and it explains everything the player is doing. So there's questions in this training area because you're a cadet. You have to know about space to be able to maneuver it. Um, and it also justifies having a scoring system. I'm very big on having gameplay elements be entirely diegetic. I think it can be confusing, a little off-putting for players to be given something that is just like video game logic, especially if people aren't familiar with games. And so every gameplay element in this is justified through the story. And so it's all pretty intuitive in that way. Um, the broader impact of this game, it's just engaging movement-based gameplay. I really want this to be something that the kids can play in the lobby of the planetarium, but adapting it to an app later so that they can come home and play that game and get invested and just kind of solidify that material. It really like kinetic, uh, fast-paced gameplay to grab them in that way. Technical aspects, yeah, utilizing the touchscreen for the lobby game, and then an app version. I was also thinking of a WebGL version so that it could be played on browsers for students who might not have access to phones. Um, so it can be played in like public libraries in school if there's computing materials there. Just make it like really simple, really easy to run, so we can port it to almost any machine that these students may have access to. And then again, all of those having a connected leaderboard, and so it can kind of help bolster that classroom culture too, of kind of seeing everyone and what their ranks are, and kind of creating this like storyline around the game, but also the people participating in that game, making the leaderboard kind of a part of this universe. Here are the educational standards we're looking at. Um, there's a lot of space science in the high school curriculum, but the main ones that I kind of picked at here were the emphasis on understanding gravitational pull in space, and then also kind of the more like information, just like yeah, purely like kind of studied facts about understanding our solar system for the question aspect of the game. So for like yeah, for the main gameplay loop, the gravitational pull will be taught and how kind of maneuvering in space works, how like kind of explaining how space works as a vacuum. But then more literally, we can apply any concept that would be taught in a high school space science class to this game through the kind of question and answer gameplay loop that we have. And that's kind of a nice thing about this game is that we can go in and iterate on what we're teaching really easily by just changing out the questions answer portion of the game. Which I plan to make entirely iterative. And so, if a teacher was to come and say, "Hey, this is the specific things I want you to touch on because we talked about this in class," it should be easy as just plugging in some new questions and plugging in answers, and the gameplay works the exact same way. So having that really like, iterative gameplay design allows us to work with those with the needs of the classroom a lot closer. Kind of the cross-cutting concepts is this kind of relational thinking, having like existing in a space and then how you connect to it applies to all sorts of sciences, all parts of the classroom. And then also kind of that overcoming of challenges and mastery of skills that are needed throughout all disciplines. Um, the how we assess what they've learned is pretty straightforward. There's a scoring system, but also on the score page and on the back end, there'll be a list of just how many questions they got right per student, and just a direct output of how many like what they're learning. So it's really straightforward in that way. And then yeah, it fits in the high school curriculum because it's space science, and we were taking from the exact like listed curriculum described in Michigan's educational standards. Uh, Here's kind of the team we're looking at. I like to think of myself as a pretty decent programmer. I have game design skills and the ability to make the kind of music I think we're aiming for this game. Um, I think about 2 to 4 additional people is needed. I think we can really do this with 3 people, but we kind of have to narrow down our scope and maybe limit how big the game is and how polished it is. With 5 people, I think we could have a really nice game. The ability to get it on the App Store and have a bunch of different avenues for these students to learn to use this game. Um, the main things we need are 2D or 3D art. We can work with either. It's just depending on the expertise. I imagine that's going to lean into the 2D art category, as artists there tends to be more experience in 2D rather than 3D. More programming skills would be nice. I'm an all right programmer, but I don't think I could program this entire thing by myself by the time we need it. And then sound design would be great. I personally believe that sound design is like one of the most important parts to making a game feel great. And so having someone with some expertise in that field would be really nice. Um, Part of the design that I've written up is that it's very flexible. Really, all we want is a touchscreen version of the game, a scoring system with some questions. Like, I think that could be developed in a week, but the reason we're adding all this time is to port it to all these different places, really like nail down the gameplay to be satisfying, fun, adding the leaderboard, kind of all this stuff on top that makes the students want to come back and re-experience the game rather than just kind of sit down with it once and be like, oh, that was cool. It's going to be a touchscreen executable for the lobby. When we were visiting the planetarium, it looked like it was running on Windows, and so it should be really easy to use, especially from the Unity engine. Hopefully, WebGL and mouse support, so that we're not just limiting students to have phones to play it outside of class, allowing it to be played on any device is really the goal here, and then an app version as well. Hopefully, something we can just get on Android and Apple app stores relatively simply. Um, but that's kind of our more red light, really having the touchscreen playable in the planetarium, and then also computer support. App support can kind of come later. Just some way for the students to get a hold of this software outside of class is the goal. And that's the game, Spaceship Slingshot. I hope you liked it. I feel free to email me for any questions. Rockwoo50 at fsu.edu. And yeah, thank you to the Nouns Project, to the Planetarium, and the developer of Stacked States, Dan Russell Pinson. Thank you.